think when we approach church decline as a problem to solve, it becomes more stressful both for the pastor and the congregation. I think if we look at it more as a challenge that we need to face, not on our own, but with God's help, because I believe that when we approach challenges and depend on ourselves only, it becomes a bigger challenge. But when we remember that, we are in this ministry and God has called us to the places where we are, and we need to depend on Him to help us through the process.
I think that when people approach church decline as a problem, they pray differently than those people who approach it as an opportunity or just reality, right? So let's just assume that all three categories, they will work hard, they will pray, so they will approach it more spiritually as well, So let's for the sake of model, let's just assume that everybody is approaching this in a spiritual manner with a prayer and with a willingness to work, But how do they differ from one another? That's what we're trying to establish.
I think, Albert, that it's a question of sort of active resistance versus passive acceptance versus trying to embrace the change. Okay. In each one of those cases, if you're setting it up as an active resistance, then the problem of what we're experiencing in the world is something we have to go out and fix. If we could just fix the problem, then it'll change. In this case, I don't know if that's going to work for us because the problem is systemic and it's much wider than just the church. It's something that's going on within society itself. So it's not necessarily something we can transform the society that way. We have to learn how to adapt with it. And I think it has to do with the other approaches. Then it's either, okay, so we see an opportunity like a missionary and we're going to approach it that way. And then sort of that passive sense is just sort of say, we're going to roll with it. Whatever kind of comes our way, we're going to ride the wave and just try to see where it takes us to.
Very helpful is that when people try to solve the problem, basically the idea is going back to where we used to be, right? And whether we can or not, whether this is a problem that we can fix or not, the goal is to go back to the finance level that we used to have, go back to the number of people we used to have, that's the goal. So we're trying to really go back to, and in terms of pandemic, we talk about going back to the normal, we're trying to go back to what we used to have, That's a main idea of a problem-solving model. Again, there's no value judgment here, that's the main idea of the problem-solving model. And how is that different from opportunity seizing model? Or if anybody has something to add about problem-solving model, you're welcome to.
Approaching church decline as a problem to be solved winds up invariably being about getting back something that we feel like we've lost. And contrasting that with seeing church decline as an opportunity, I believe that kind of frees us to imagine all possibilities. I think it even makes you pray differently, because all you're really wanting to do is have God show you where, have God show you what, have God instill enough wisdom in you to see where the opportunities are. And that's scarier, because if I want to get back to where I was, I have a touchstone. I have something that I'm looking for. Even if I can never get there, I know what it is. But if what I'm seeing is possibility, that's energizing because it makes for all potential to be achievable. But I don't have a thing that I'm driving toward.
So how would the day-to-day life of the church, day-to-day life of the pastor different depending on whether you're approaching it as a problem-solving model or opportunity seizing model? What What do they do differently?
I can't help but see the parallel in a lot of examples, but like Target stores taking over little local shops. And so what do the local shops, the owners of those local shops, have to do in this situation if they're like the owners of the pastors? And I guess the opportunity model would be, okay, you can't compete with Target. And Target being whatever secularism, individualism, whatever the alternate to the church is. I think the opportunity is, okay, what do we need to become? Maybe a niche type of, maybe, okay, it's not, if problem solving is going back to where we were, opportunity is, okay, where do we need to go, all right? Okay. So for me, and my personal, I guess, ministry leanings, I keep going back to the grassroots early church.
To piggyback on that, basically the problem-solving model talks about the world as if, that's a problem. The world has changed. People are too much into soccer. People, people are just comfortable doing online service. They think of the world change as a problem, but the people who are more of opportunity thinkers tend to really view it as, okay, that's the way the world is. That's the way it is. So how do I need to shift? That's along the same line, DK, right? That what you're talking about. Like, Target is here. They're here to stay. So what do I need to do differently?
So I do think our system, our institution is broken. So if you want to think of that as a problem, and that the pandemic has offered us a very large opportunity, because now our communities can never say, we've always done it that way. Shift and pivot and change and adjust, meet needs differently. We've all had to learn collectively how to be the body of Christ. So if we only focus on buildings and finances, then we will have a problem to solve. But if we engage the opportunity and our theology of death, right, and resurrection, death is not a bad thing. It brings new life. It brings resurrection. How do we not build memorials, stone temples? How do we engage in relationship? How do we walk with each other, companion each other, find God in what is now? So how do we let go of what was, which may be the problem to be solved, and embrace what God is inviting us into, which I don't believe is going to look or feel or sound like what it did. I think that we are actually being ushered toward being the body of Christ in the world, much more relational, much more mission focused, less driven by commodity and selling what we have. So I don't think it's going to be like a Target store. I think it's going to be very different. I think it's going to be community gardens. It's going to be feeding the poor, the hungry, sheltering the homeless. It's going to be those active social ministries that we're all called and drawn to.
And I appreciate you talking about how the system is broken, right? We talk about how system is broken, and we often point fingers at the people who cause this system to be broken. But opportunity thinkers often think of it as, how is this brokenness an opportunity? I hope this helps you to think about, the difference between opportunity approach and the problem-solving approach. How is the reality acceptance model different? Somebody want to explain, how is it different from the opportunity or the problem-solving model? And we talked about opportunity thinkers often accept the reality, but how is it different?
I think that the reality acceptance model has as its foundation kind of a quiet trust in God. And I'm trying to lean into the positive here. It has that quiet trust to say, oh, you know what, no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. When we talk about church decline, a lot of times we talk about the decline of a specific denomination or a set of denominations. And yet the reality acceptance model sort of says, but the kingdom of God isn't going anywhere. The church universal, to DK's point earlier, the church universal is still going to be there. God finds a way.
Yes.
And God does seem to work around. And I think that model, this sort of acceptance model, is letting ourselves be like water and just flowing into the containers and around the rocks and the obstacles that seem to come our way.
All is well model, yeah, right? It just, this is a reality, and somehow there's a beauty in it, and it may seem like a little bit passive, but it could be profoundly spiritual as well. Oftentimes the goal in the reality acceptance model is simple appreciation of the reality. And sometimes when the reality seems very bleak, the goal is endurance. We just endure this until the good time comes.
I think where my church and myself is that we tend to be in a problem-solving model, because folks are always talking about what used to be, and when will we get back to the old days when we had so many people, we used to get this amount of money, and we used to do this program and we are not doing it now, and when we had this program we had so many people participating, and church can get stuck in that place and be discouraged because they're not seeing a move towards what used to be. They're not going backward to what they used to have. So that blocks the opportunity to see what we could become instead of looking back at what we were.
We are trying to adapt to new changes. So often, we talk about what will church be like 5 years from now. So we are trying, with all this technology and Sunday school and youth group and all that, we're trying to find ways to meet the needs of our community and our congregation, because 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's not gonna be the same with all these changes, especially because of a pandemic. We feel like, there were going to be changes, but because of pandemic, it's speeding up. I'm also talking about the way to worship, different way to get connected. So we are trying to learn new technology. We are trying to work together so that we could continue to provide virtual worship, but at the same time, people worshiping online will be feeling as part of the church, not just to worship 1 hour, but how can they actively be involved even though they're worshiping online. So that's what that's our focus. So we are trying to prepare for what's going to happen in our church, because God is everywhere and God is God all the time, right? For all the time. So if we just stay as we were, and if the pandemic is over, let's say, and if we try to go back to the way we were worshiping or running the church, we don't think it's gonna work. So we are trying to prepare. What can we do for the future church?
Jane, would you say, I know it's not always a clear cut, but would you say that's more of a problem solving model or more of a opportunity seeking model?
I think both, but more like opportunity.
Okay, great.
Me especially, and my church as well, we go back between both. And I realize the problem solving is in a way that kind of holding on to power. I don't want to change. In the old model, the pastor is, I don't know, depending upon your context, respected or a nice place. Whereas the opportunistic model means, I have to change, I have to let go of things, new way of thinking. I might not be in the same place as I was in the old. So I struggle back and forth. When I see less people in the pews, I go to problem solving mode. Like my reactive mode comes up. But then when I sit back down, I know, okay, we're in a new world now. Especially being in a Korean American immigrant church, we in particular know that the first generation Korean speaking congregation, and everyone, even the first generation, agrees that, yeah, we are old news and we have to make way for the new English-speaking, Korean-American, multi-ethnic congregation. And our congregation is on board to go to the opportunity. But because we're human beings, fallen, I don't want to get too theological, but we go back to holding on to what we have. So we bounce back and forth.
In observing three churches lately, and also I'm serving as outreach minister, and often I feel that ministry is a very, very, important when, they consider lay people to be deeply involved, because I observed that three churches, pastors kind of exclude those who do not agree with them, and very much, sorry to say this, ministers are very, very self-interest seeking. Many talented lay people are sitting in the church. They are sleeping giants, but ministers are not using them very, very effectively, or they are not interested in sharing kind of authority. They want to have a kind of a very, authoritarian power relationship. It's not working in my mind. I strongly believe in universal priesthood.
Yes.
That's the area we are lacking so much. That's my observation lately.
As I listened to the conversation, I realized that we too are between the problem solving and the opportunity model. Most of us are embracing the technology, but there's still some members who are reluctant to, go on Zoom, whether for worship service or for meetings or for Bible study or whatever it is. So I do see us between, the problem solving model and the opportunity model.
My perspective is not, the problem solving model is better or the opportunity seeking model is better. I think that each context, each season of life, that each person's and each congregation really have to determine, which season they are in. And I think that one of the most important responsibility as a spiritual leader is to make those discernments. So I'm not saying one model is better than another.
Some systems change, ways that we could kind of anticipate that. First, when you're making change, the system is going to deny it, and then it's going to be defensive, and then it's going to minimize, boys will be boys, and then it will begin to accept and adapt and ultimately integrate. But that's a long, drawn out process. So no matter what's occurring, there's going to be an immediate denial. I mean, that's kind of the first reality. And then it'll get defensive. So I think just anticipating that there are going to be these it's a systemic journey toward integration, right? But if you approach change, opportunity, hope in that way, and expectation of future, then it's not as difficult, I think, to keep moving forward.
It takes a lot of energy to move from stability to motion, so that's one of the reality that we face. Stability and the inertia is one of the issue, right? The church decline really helps us to move that inertia. People are a lot more ready to move when things don't seem to be okay, right? When life is not great, we're a lot more motivated, right? So in that sense, the church decline may provide opportunity as well. But
I think problem solving and opportunity seeking, they must work together. Like doctors, they don't just find ways to get better without finding out what is wrong. So we have to know our church people, children and families. So, and then so that we could analyze why is our church declining. And then as we do the problem solving, we could also set a new goal so that we find new ways to grow. So which also means opportunity seeking. So I think they work hand in hand.
One of the obstacle is, either or thinking. We often really thought of you have to change or, but there may be people who could just stay where they are, and we can still seek opportunity for something else. But there's a sense in which that we have embraced that we all have to work together for one goal. Whereas maybe there are ways that there are people who want to solve problems, they can solve the problems, and there are people who just want to seek opportunity. We can do, and maybe we can do both instead of just thinking either or.
And more fundamentally, if I look at my own self, my own heart, why I know I have to think the opportunity model, but my heart keeps going back to the problem solving model is, and this is kind of, I guess, a value judgment against problem solving model. Is this innate desire to survive. I want to survive. I want to maintain. I want to exist. and I think I try to, I guess, force myself or pray towards, you don't need to survive. Pick up the cross. Anyone who tries to save his life will lose it. But those who are willing to lose their life will save it. I'm just talking human innate DNA. It's just, I want to keep what I have and not go backward, I guess.
So I appreciate your honesty, DK. And let me just ask you this. Would you say you're naturally more of a person who loves more stability than adventure?
I guess I'm risk averse more than risk,
You're not a risk lover.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Comfort is good. What?
So maybe I want to frame it this way. I think for so long, sort of like people have threatened us to change, right? So the whole idea, you need to change or else you will die. That model that line doesn't seem to work very well, So from an opportunities point of view, I wonder, and I don't really have a solution, but I wonder if there are ways that you can respect your nature and seek opportunity together, as opposed to, like somehow I'm the problem, so I need to solve me, and I wonder if there are ways that we can love the people into the change, instead of threatening people into the change. Yeah.
Albert, the thing that you just said that really resonates with me is the idea of needing to fix myself or solve myself. I tend to be risk averse even when I'm embracing the adventure of opportunity seeking. And one of the ways I have found to really address that is to acknowledge it and then put people around me in leadership who I know are a lot less risk averse, and then to trust them when they say, I think this is the way. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll go. We've already established that I trust you. Okay, let's try. And to just kind of not assert whatever authority or power people might allow me to assert, and let other people with vision own it. And I just kind of take a step back and resource them while they do what needs to be done. It's actually a scary way to be in ministry, but I find that it can create energy within the congregation, especially the inner and middle circle of leaders. And I also wanted to address your question about what stops us from moving forward. And in the context of where we are in this specific time in the world, for us here, it's a sense of insecurity, and it's emotional instability caused by the pandemic and not knowing anything about anything. You know, we on a Sunday we were talking about what if we closed, Wednesday we were closed, you know, and everybody was gone. And we had to really shift and figure out a lot of things really, really fast, which we did. But what that created as people began to get sick and people began to die, you know, we opened back up, and people who had been with us the last time we were open were not even on this earth anymore. And that is creating this deep sense of grief and loss that I think is making people want to cling to what they last knew was real. Even if we can't ever get that back, they're still holding on to it because that was the last time things were normal. And I have to have that if I'm gonna live.
What you shared about the really the team spirit, you know, that goes back to what Hye-young was talking about, that sort of the team spirit and between the clergy and the laity. I thought that was beautiful, you know. But in terms of the people's grief and people's sense of crisis, and I think it's related to DK's comment about, you know, like when we notice that I am the problem, you know, when we notice that, I wonder if opportunity thinkers often really think of these problems also as an opportunity as well. And I wonder if that really sort of fits in with the notion of the Christian gospel as well, in the sense, you know, the problem solvers will often think of grief as a problem and say, you know, we need to fix it and you need to get over it, right? Whereas opportunity thinkers will often approach the grief and say, let's see what God does in this grief, you know, let's see what God does among the people who just can't let go, you know. What if they're not the problem to solve? What if this grief is where God wants us to be, you know, even entering into the tombs, you know, and, you know, bringing life in the tomb, you know. I wonder if that fits more of a opportunity approach, in the sense, you know what, you know, if you just can't let go, you know, let's see how we can love each other in that place, you know. If you can't change, I'm not going to judge you for not changing, you know, but let's see, you know, let's see what, if there's any opportunity for grace.
I'm resonating so strongly with what we're talking about here, because I think that all three of these models have something to offer, and I'm sensing within myself how I shift from one to the other and really I don't think I ever leave any one of those models behind. I think I've got all three of them in balance of some kind. It's more a question of emphasis and where I'm perceiving my direction. What is the push I want to make? Do I want to try to embrace the opportunity? Am I embracing the problem? Am I just accepting reality and just trying to accept it? I mean, it's interesting to me that all three of these, in some sense, are almost like stages of grief, and that we're talking about that. You know, we kind of move from one to the other, and that's what my heart is doing. And I'm so conscious of the church as an institution really being more like an organism. And what I sense within the congregation, and probably one of the tensions that we have out there going on now, is that people are going through these incredible cycles of, okay, I want to push forward and embrace new opportunities. Wait, I have to withdraw. I'm spent. I have to withdraw. And even just sort of saying, okay, I just need to be. I mean, how many times have we said over the last few years, like, I just need to stop and be for a second here. You know, all three of those tensions. And what I think is going on in the church is that when people are gathering, when we are gathering together, whether it's on Zoom or otherwise, they're looking and they're feeling one of those three ways. And it's just a question of, well, but what is the community as a whole feeling in this moment?
I still believe that we need to
help people, our congregation, our members, or people in community to find God in their life. I still believe that God is the solution to their problems, and God is who they need in order to find happiness in their life. So whether we are a problem solver or opportunity seeker, we still need to find ways to go back to the scripture to worship or have small gatherings. But whatever we do, we have to, as spiritual leaders, we need to have that foundation in us that, we need to let them know, lead them to God, to God's word.
One of the difficulties in the opportunity seeking approach is we don't necessarily know what opportunity that we're seeking. Like I think Adrienne talked about it, right? When we're talking about problem solving, we have a clear idea as to what we want to go back to. When we're talking about opportunity thinking, and I think this is a role of a spiritual leader, we need to be very clear about what is it that we're looking, like for target example, we're looking profits, right? But what Jane is saying is, what, we're just looking for opportunity for people to experience God.
Yeah.
Each one of us may have a very different answer as to what we're looking for, and it's okay for us to be different, but we need to be clear about what is it that we're looking for.
Social scientists have been saying that people are getting more and more spiritual. And they found that bookstores, the most selling books are spirituality books and music too. And a lot of opportunities. I would say in a broader perspective, church has not been declining. If you look at all these factors. And also another thing I'd like to share with you, the beauty of this gathering is a very important, should be emphasized. Always, new solution comes when 2 or 3 get together. Jesus will be there. I think that's the beauty of this kind of a conversation. And third thing I'd like to share my perspective is that I truly believe in sanctification. As I said, I've been observing 3 churches, and we need to improve our attitude and skills, our theology, every day, ongoing learning until, we go to heaven. That's our life.
After this meeting, I'm going to go back to our church leaders, and we will start to talk about, so what can we do for our church? So I will open the conversation.
I'm walking away with the power of a narrative, that the story that we tell ourselves as the church about what is happening helps to shape and frame the reality that we're walking into. Because in each one of the models that we're looking at, there's value there. And I think for me that the touchstone comes back to seeing reality as it is and deciding where the places are, that there are small steps that we can take that will chart into something new and unknown, but something also beautiful. I'm hearing in some of our conversation just how we talk about grace, which is our Christian contribution to the world. Really, this discussion about how we bring beauty out of ashes and how we create new spaces in this world in which God can work freely. I hope we go there. And I'm looking for within myself that that courage to be able to step into it more consistently.
Take with me that there's always an opportunity for love. And the deep connections that I listened and witnessed the love of congregation, the love of God, the love of community. So there's always an opportunity to love.
What I'm taking away from this session is a deeper understanding that there are three models from which we can operate. And that depending on where you are or what you're facing, one or two or all three of those models can be applied. And how do I apply these models? Looking at the situation, the people involved, and trying to figure out which of these models is more applicable to the situation. Because I believe that in different situations, one of these models or two might be more applicable than the other.
I'm still leaning as the opportunity model as the main, recognizing that the other can coexist to some degree. But I guess, Pastor Albert, you challenged, like, what is that opportunity? What is the 5-year, 10-year, 20-year future that, the opportunity that, and I think for maybe most of us, we don't know what it is. But, if I can say, if it's kingdom, quote unquote, oriented, what is it that we're ultimately trying to, if we kind of put the institution part a little bit lower on the priority, what is that opportunity? Try to define that. I mean, through myself through prayer and quiet time and all that stuff, but with the congregation. But I guess with the last few people that shared, whatever that opportunity is and going to end up being, the journey, I guess, has to have grace, love, joy, all that stuff in it. So that's the part that it wasn't really oriented to think about, but with the few people that shared towards the end, I guess don't forget that, whatever the opportunity is.